One day, 2000 years ago, Plato was doing a lecture wherein he said that a human being is a unfeathered biped. Diogenes the Cynic, upon hearing about this, one day burst into one of his lectures and said, "Behold, a man clutching a plucked chicken," much to the laughter of many of the people within the lecture. And it seems to me that in our day and age, 2000 years later, we have been having many Plato versus Diogenes moments, where the far left, the intersectional left to be more precise, will define a woman as a woman who identifies as a woman, and likewise a man who identifies as a man. Of course, the TERFs, who are also feminists and leftists, don't agree with this statement. They believe it's to do with biology, but nonetheless, this is the game that we've been playing with these people. The SJWs will say what they think a woman is, and then those of us who don't agree with that statement will simply bring forth an example of somebody who very clearly does not meet that description, but nonetheless claims they are, and say, "Behold, a man." And ladies and gentlemen, Ellen Page, or rather, Elliot Page, has just given us, yet again, that same old situation. Now, we all know who Ellen Page is. If you don't know who Ellen Page is, then I'm sorry, but you obviously don't watch films or have any interest in popular culture or anything like that. How do you not know the star of Juno? She was in Inception. She was in the 2010 film Super, where she played reasonably attractive sidekick to the main character. It was one of those real-life superhero kind of films where they were trying to subvert the superhero genre, kind of like what Kick-Ass was. And in that film, she engages in what I can only say is unconsensual sex with the main character. Let's put it like that, shall we? But then, immediately after all this fame and success, she came out a couple of years ago, last decade, and said that she was a lesbian. Whereas before, it seemed to us that she was at least straight or possibly bi, but nobody really cared. It wasn't something that figured much in our imaginations about her. She was just, I guess, a cute, slightly petite actress who was pretty good at what she did in the roles that she generally picked. And, you know, she was a bit of a sex symbol for some people, but she was never really anything for me. Like, I'm not really interested in her. She's not my type. It was that coming out, quote unquote, that put her on the map for the intersectionals. This was something that made her an icon for them. Now, personally, I couldn't help but think at the time that it was possibly something for attention because, well, let's just say she was getting older and roles didn't seem to be coming for her, at least roles that were putting her in the limelight as much, like after Inception, after Super, after Juno. Can't say she was really in any films that I can remember that were pretty big. And now, in her 30s, she has come out and said that she is no longer just Ellen Page or a lesbian, she's actually a man called Elliot Page. And this was something that obviously she's been feeling for a very long time now. I mean, don't be skeptical, guys, you bigots. And in a statement on Twitter, she said this: "Hi friends, I want to share with you that I am trans. My pronouns are he, they. Name is Elliot. I feel lucky to be writing this, to be here, to have arrived at this place in my life. I feel overwhelming gratitude for the incredible people who have supported me along this journey. I can't begin to express how remarkable it feels to finally love who I am enough to pursue my authentic self. I've been endlessly inspired by so many in the trans community. Thank you for your courage, your generosity, and your ceaselessly working to make this world a more inclusive and compassionate place. I will offer whatever support I can and continue to strive for a more loving and equal society. I also ask for patience. My joy is real, but it is also fragile. The truth is, despite feeling profoundly happy right now and knowing how much privilege I carry, I am also scared. I'm scared of the invasiveness, the hate, the jokes, and of violence. To be clear, I am not trying to dampen a moment that is joyous and one that I celebrate, but I want to address the full picture. The statistics are staggering. The discrimination towards trans people is rife, insidious and cruel, resulting in horrific consequences. In 2020 alone, it has been reported that at least 40 transgender people have been murdered, the majority of which were Black and Latinx trans women. To the political leaders who work to criminalise trans healthcare and deny our right to exist, and to all of those with a massive platform who continue to spew hostility towards the trans community, you have blood on your hands. You unleash a fury of vile and demeaning rage that lands on the shoulders of the trans community, a community in which 40% of trans adults report attempting suicide. Enough is enough. You aren't being cancelled. You are hurting people. I am one of those people, and we won't be silent in the face of your attacks. I love that I am trans, and I love that I am queer. And the more I hold myself close and fully embrace who I am, the more I dream, the more my heart grows, and the more I thrive. To all trans people who deal with harassment, self-loathing, abuse, and the threat of violence every day, I see you, I love you, and I will do everything I can to change this world for the better. Elliot. Now, where to begin? Well, the beginning, because immediately the pronouns tell you all you need to know about the authenticity and honesty of this statement and this, I guess, coming out. This second coming out, I might add, because remember, she had the first one when she announced she was gay, and now this one, he, they, as opposed to he, him. If it was he, him, I might be more inclined to give the benefit of the doubt to Paige, but unfortunately, I can't because they're using the they pronouns, which is characteristic of a non-binary, trans-trender type person who's only doing this for attention and to further agendas. I think that is the first red flag in this. And then in the third paragraph, Paige states that as much as Paige wants to enjoy this, Paige has to lecture us on the apparent issue that is transgender murder and that Paige has a lot of privilege. I mean, I don't know what this privilege is, but regardless, we have to be lectured that all these people who are apparently mostly black and Latino people are being killed because they're trans, with no citations whatsoever. And we have to now be lectured about how the politicians and those of us who may have certain issues with the trans lobby, the trans activists, not trans people themselves, because, I don't hate them as people. I hate the people who claim to represent them, who they don't. They represent themselves and their political agenda. Apparently, we are the ones who have blood on our hands, and we're the ones who are trying to criminalise trans treatment, even though there's been no such attempt, as far as I'm aware. If there is one, it's so tiny and minuscule that it doesn't even seem to reach even mainstream news. Who's actually trying to do this? Note throughout this whole statement, Paige doesn't even go into the history of how he, she, they, whatever, discovered that they were trans. Usually, they will go into this. People who are legitimately trans will tell you, well, it seems to me like it was a burning thought in the back of my head for many, many years since I was a child, or maybe they slowly began to notice over time that things didn't seem right in their own body and it was beginning to hurt them in their head. They saw this person in the mirror and it didn't reflect what they felt inside. She's not saying any of this. This isn't really about her. This is about other things, other political activist things that she wants to push, and about how she's happy and how she's queer, apparently, and trans. But nothing about how she got to this point. She is saying what her pronouns are, but regardless, this is not a statement that I can say for sure I fully 100% believe. I just don't. It could be many different things. It could be a legitimate thing, and we will see Elliot Page in the near future with a beard and muscles and things like that. It could just be a cry for attention. This is a Hollywood star that hasn't really had anything going for them for ages. Like, when was the last time Paige was in something? I can't remember. And it's just jumping on the bandwagon of the trans movement. Or it could just be, I'm going to make this statement to drum up support for yet more trans activism. It could be, because the main paragraph is about all these things. But it's interesting that she only mentions the trans women, and only 40 people were killed. This is actually a very low number. I mean, there's not a lot of trans people anyway. There's probably about a couple 100,000, if that. 40 people is nothing. There are more people in the inner cities, mainly black, but also white and Latino, who are cisgendered, who get murdered across the US. They're getting gunned down in the streets because of gang violence and things like that. And right now, in the city of London, and perhaps even in my city of Manchester, there's people getting stabbed and having acid thrown at them in inner city areas. They're all mostly cis, but of course, she doesn't care about those minorities. She only cares about the one that she wants to care about right now. So that's what I think this is. I'm erring on the side that this is actually a cry for attention. Nothing out of the ordinary. To be honest, it's something that Elliot Page would do, because this is exactly what they did when they became a lesbian. But what I also find funny is that Page is now a man and likes women, but is still queer. That's not how that works, Page. If you are a man and you like women, you're either bi or you're straight. Which means, if you only like women, you're straight. That means you're a straight white male now. Welcome to the majority of the Western world. I hope you have a lot of fun with those people who are the most demonized group in the world currently. Welcome to the patriarchy. Although I did find the memes funny, like calling, but Ellen/Elliot Page is nothing more than a symptom of a larger trend. What we see is large amounts of women and men who at one point in time were normal people, who dressed normally, acted normally, and if they were eccentric, if they had things that were different about them, it was nothing that was too unusual to think these people have radically changed. No, you would just assume they're an eccentric in the traditional sense, if that makes any sense. But no, as soon as these people get in contact with more far-left ideology and people, they suddenly change drastically, like the whole image changes into something horrible. Like, you've seen the whole before and after feminism meme, where there's a woman who looks very nice, she looks kind of somebody who's like the girl next door or something, and you think, hey, I could marry that person. But then 5 years later, after university, they've got shaved hair and they just look horrible. Ellen Page is another example of that, only now she's saying that not only is she a lesbian or queer, again, they seem to use these terms interchangeably nowadays, she's also trans. So now it's Elliot Page. This is the person that you used to fancy when you watched Juno 10 years ago, guys. What is it about leftism, at least the intersectional variety of it, that does this to people? I'm of the belief that it's simply just a uniform. These people adopt these things because this is what everybody else looks like, and that's what they need to look like in order to fit in, and also to show off who they are, and what they believe in. That's what it is. It's peacocking. Ellen Page, Elliot Page, I don't know. We'll see in the next 5 years if they even attempt to transition. We'll see even in the next couple of months if they try to at least live like a man. The one thing that Elliot Page has in favour is that they've always been slightly tomboyish. But here's another thing that I've noticed, and that is you can no longer be a tomboy. You can't even be just a little bit effeminate. It seems to me that these people who would be considered tomboys and effeminate types, I don't know what the male version of a tomboy is. I can't think of the word. I just think it's effeminate, that's all, which is not a bad thing, by the way. I'm just saying that's what it is. You can no longer be a guy who likes slightly more feminine things, or a girl that likes slightly more masculine things, and still be a man and a woman. You have to be trans. And it seems to me a lot of these people who otherwise would have been like that, and had no issues whatsoever, seem to be transitioning and announcing that they're trans at an ever-increasing rate. I think this is what some people call the pink pill, or pink pilling, where you are slowly but surely, one would cynically say manipulated, others would say simply convinced via evidence and rational thinking that you're actually trans because you exhibit all these so-called symptoms. I think that's what it is. And I think because of the intersectional movement and how they define gender so loosely, this has created a blurring of the lines. Whereas a person who very clearly would be a girl, but obviously is just a tomboy, is now apparently no different to a boy, when obviously there is. And when I was a kid, it was very obvious that tomboys were girls and boys who were a bit girly were still boys. But now, there seems to be no such border between them. And that was probably on purpose, but why, I don't know. Maybe it's just a logical conclusion from what they believe. I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to end it there, guys. Until next time, it's been your boy, and I'll see you all later.